The sky hadn't been blue in weeks. Ash hung in the air like guilt, thick, bitter, and impossible to ignore. What used to be Chicago now looked like the bones of a city. Buildings leaned like old men, half of them hollowed out by plasma strikes. The streets were silent, except for the distant hum of a scout drone cutting across the gray clouds overhead. Corporal Raiden Holt adjusted the strap of his battered rifle and crouched behind what used to be a food truck. The smell of burnt metal and old blood clung to him like a second skin. They told them Earth wouldn't last a week, that the humans, fragile, divided, emotional, would fold under pressure the way other species had. After all, every alien race the Graal Dominion had conquered had cracked after the first orbital barrage. But humans didn't crack. They buried their dead, bit down on their grief, and fought like animals with something to prove. Raiden had been there when the first wave landed, saw his entire unit get reduced to burning shadows on the pavement when the Graal hit them with sonic disruptors. He should have died too. Would have if he hadn't tripped into a collapsed subway tunnel and blacked out for 3 hours under rubble. He woke up to a different Earth. One where governments no longer existed, where military channels were jammed or silent, where the only orders were survival. And somehow, even in that chaos, humans didn't stop fighting. A voice crackled in his earpiece, weak, almost drowned out by static. 3 patrolling east side, same formation. You ready, Holt? Raiden recognized the voice. Dax. He was 17, maybe. Still had a fresh scar running across his cheek from when a Graal drone clipped him last week. Yeah, Raiden whispered. Got 2 mags left. After that, it's sharp rocks and bad words. Dax chuckled, a dry, bitter sound. That's more than I've got. Raiden peeked around the truck. Sure enough, 3 Grail soldiers slithered down the boulevard like they owned it. 7-foot freaks, silver armor that shimmered with some kind of self-repair tech. No faces, just that black oval mask with a pulsing red slit for a mouth. He raised his rifle slowly, breath shallow. Every nerve screamed at him to run, not because he was scared of dying. He'd accepted that weeks ago. It was the pain that came before it. The Grail liked to make examples of fighters. Skin flayed with sonic blades, bones shattered then healed with alien tech, only to be broken again. Raiden didn't want to be an example, but he also wasn't about to die crouched behind a taco truck. Wait till they pass, he said. Then we hit from both sides. Copy, Dax replied. As the Graal passed, Raiden's finger hovered on the trigger. 1 second. 2. He was about to move. A cough, not from him, from across the street. A child. One of the Graal turned instantly. Their hearing was better than a dog's. It aimed its plasma cannon toward the noise, charging it with that horrible, high-pitched whine that made Raiden's teeth hurt. No time. Raiden leapt out, screaming. The first shot went through the Graal's neckplate. A lucky hit. It stumbled, gurgling, and fired, too late and too wide. The blast missed the alley, but blew a mailbox into smoking shards. The other 2 turned, fast as vipers. Raiden ducked behind a wrecked car as energy bolts scorched past. He could hear Dax shouting across the street, laying down cover fire. The world exploded in chaos. 1 Graal charged, and Raiden rolled out, jamming his second mag in mid-run. He fired wildly, shot slamming into the alien's armor, barely slowing it down. Then a scream. Dax. Raiden turned in time to see the kid go down. His body jerked, lit up by a plasma burst that took most of his chest with it. Something inside Raiden snapped. He didn't think, just ran, straight at the bastard that killed Dax. The rifle was empty before he reached it. He tossed it, drew his knife, and lunged. It was ugly. It was brutal. But it ended with the Grail twitching on the ground, Gurgling through a shattered breathing mask, Raiden stood over it, blood on his hands, panting like a cornered wolf. "We bleed," he muttered, "but we don't quit." He looked up at the drone still hovering far above, watching. Recording. Good. Let them watch, let them learn. The drone vanished into the clouds like it had seen enough. Raiden wiped Dax's blood from his cheek, though the smell lingered. Burning copper and death. The kind of smell you don't forget, not even in your dreams. The boy's body lay in the dirt behind a burnt-out sedan. No time to bury, no time to mourn. Not out here, where the sky watched and the enemy never slept. Raiden knelt beside him anyway, pulled the dog tags off his neck, not regulation tags, just a piece of bent metal tied with shoelace. Dax had carved it from a toaster the week after the power grids died. It said, "Dax, human." Nothing else. He closed the kid's eyes. They didn't stay shut. The skin was too stiff already. "Should have been me," he muttered. The guilt wasn't new, just heavier now. Dax had been stupid. Brave, but stupid. And now he was just another name to scratch into a wall, if any walls were left to remember him. Raiden pushed himself to his feet and looked around. The Growl Patrol was dead, but they'd heard the firefight. There'd be more. Drones, most likely. Maybe a hunter pack. Maybe worse. He couldn't stay. He grabbed what he could. Ammo from the alien corpses, useless without converter mods, but maybe he could trade them. A plasma knife still humming faintly, and Dax's last ration bar from his jacket. Crushed, half melted, didn't matter. Food was food, and then he ran. Not out of fear, out of instinct. There's a difference. Raiden slipped through the skeletal streets like a shadow. He knew this part of the city by muscle memory, had walked it as a teen, sneaking out at night, smoking behind diners, fighting over nothing with other pissed-off boys who thought they'd live forever. Now it was just ruins, history torn open and left to bleed out. The tunnels were safer. Not safe, just safer. He reached the old sewer grate behind the collapsed train station, pried it open and dropped inside. Darkness swallowed him instantly, but he knew the path. Left at the second junction. Watch for the broken step at the old maintenance ladder. Don't shine light. The Growl had motion sensors everywhere. Sometimes you could see their blinking eyes in the sludge, like rats with laser sights. The deeper he went, the quieter the world became. It was like descending into a graveyard no one remembered. After a mile, he stopped at a locked metal hatch. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 more. 1 long drag of metal across the door. The password. No one used words anymore. Too risky. Too easy to record and mimic. A peephole slid open. Just a slit of light. A voice behind it. Gritty. Female. "You alone?" Raiden nodded. "Show me your blood." He bit the tip of his finger and held it up. The drop of red gleamed faintly in the dark. The hatch opened with a hiss. Inside was hell, but human hell. Trash fires, broken lights, and bodies curled in corners like discarded bags. Men with dead eyes. Women with blades hidden in their sleeves. Kids with faces too old for their size. It smelled like rot and desperation. But it was theirs. A man stepped forward. Broad shoulders, cropped hair, 1 eye. The other socket burned out and sealed with melted skin. "Raiden Holt," he said. Not a question. Raiden nodded. "Still breathing?" "Barely," the man replied. "Where's Dax?" Raiden held up the dog tag. Silence. The man took it, looked at it like it was a sacred thing, then tucked it into his pocket. "Another ghost," he murmured. "What's the count now?" Raiden asked. 62 this month, 11 under 20. Raiden closed his eyes. That kind of number used to be statistics, news stories. Now it was names he'd know if he asked. faces he'd seen. People who'd laughed 5 days ago and were now ash in the wind. "I need a rebreather," Raiden said. "And if there's food, I'll trade alien tech, plasma cores." The man raised a brow. "Dead patrol?" "3. One of them took Dax." I took its face. That got a few nods from the shadows. Even in grief, revenge earned respect. The man led him deeper, past makeshift barricades and half-assembled weapons. Resistance cells were never organized, just desperate clusters trying to fight a war they didn't understand with tools that didn't belong to them. They reached a side room, lit with a single red bulb. A girl no older than 20 sat sharpening a blade. One leg was a prosthetic, mechanical, old school, probably stolen from a hospital before it was leveled. She looked up as they entered. Didn't smile. "This him?" she asked. Raiden answered before the man could. "Yeah." "And you?" "Eva," she said. "I watch the border. Kill rats, kill traitors. Sometimes same thing." Raiden dropped his gear by the door and sat. The man tossed him a rebreather. "We're moving tomorrow." Raiden looked up sharply. "Where?" "South. Heard there's a resistance group in Oklahoma. Organized, military-grade ex-Rangers, maybe even air support." Raiden snorted. "Air support's a myth." "Maybe," the man said, "but so is survival, and here we are." Eva spoke up. "You in, Holt? Or you gonna run solo again?" He didn't answer right away. He'd been alone too long, trusted too many people who didn't deserve it. Saw too many groups fall apart from hunger, panic, or betrayal. Humans weren't saints. Some sold out their own to the Grail for scraps of tech or a place in a slave hive. But these people had buried Dax. That mattered. "I'm in," he said finally. Eva tossed him a ration pack. "Then eat. You look like shit." He did. Felt worse. That night, Raiden couldn't sleep. The others snored, murmured, or cried in their dreams, but he just stared at the ceiling, listening to the distant echoes of movement, rats or footsteps. Didn't matter. Everything down here made noise eventually. He kept thinking about Dax. The way his eyes had gone wide when the plasma hit. The way he still tried to raise his weapon, even with half his chest gone. The way he looked like he didn't want to die, even though they all said they were ready. No one's ever really ready. Raiden's hand drifted to the hilt of his knife. The blade was dull now, not from misuse, from overuse. He'd killed 14 Growl in total. Not enough to change the war, not enough to bring anyone back, but enough to make them notice. He wondered if the drone that watched him had reported what it saw. If somewhere, in some alien war room aboard a battleship orbiting Earth, a Grail general watched the footage of Raiden standing over his soldier's corpse. He hoped so. He hoped it made them afraid. At dawn, or what passed for it in the tunnels, the resistance moved. Raiden walked near the front, not because he volunteered, because they trusted him to spot danger. He'd survived things others hadn't. That made him useful. They climbed out of the sewers through a maintenance shaft near the old train line. The sky was still thick with ash. The city burned in the distance, always burning. They moved fast. No talking. Just hand signs and instinct. The Grail had eyes everywhere. Drones. Bugs. Listening tech buried in streetlights. Sometimes the enemy was a man with a calm smile and an alien tracker in his back pocket. Halfway through the ruins of Lincoln Park, they hit resistance. A Grull scout. Not just a drone. A walker unit. 4 legs. Mounted cannon. Armored like a tank. It saw them. Raiden didn't hesitate. He launched forward, flanked right, dropped into cover. The others scattered. The walker opened fire. Blue bolts ripping through concrete like paper. One man screamed. His head was gone before he hit the ground. Eva dove beside Raiden. "That's not patrol tech. That's hunting gear." "They're upping the game," he said, checking his rifle. 1 mag. half full. "We're not going to win this one straight," she muttered. Raiden looked at her. "Then we don't fight straight." She met his eyes. He smiled. Not because he was happy, because it was war. And this was what humans did best: turn hopeless fights into nightmares for the other guy. The walker wasn't a machine, not in the way Earth knew machines. It moved like a spider but thought like a soldier. Growl war tech fused with biointelligence, semi-sentient, and powered by living tissue from the species they'd conquered. That thing hunting Raiden and the others? It wasn't just hardware. It was revenge wrapped in steel. Raiden dove behind an overturned bus as plasma bolts sizzled overhead, turning the air thick and hot. Eva rolled in beside him, panting, blood already running down her left arm. Shrapnel. "You good?" he asked, eyes still locked on the walker. She hissed through her teeth. "Yeah, just clipped." They were pinned. The others had scattered when the attack started. A few might have escaped through the alley systems, but most were trapped. And Raiden knew damn well the Grail didn't take prisoners. Not unless they needed test subjects. He peeked out. The walker was scanning the ruins slowly, methodically. It hadn't seen them yet, not directly. Its main cannon rotated back and forth like a predator sniffing the wind. Eva reached into her jacket and pulled out a grenade. Old tech, Earth standard, useless against full armor, but maybe... Raiden held up a hand. "Don't waste it." She glared. "Then what? Wait to get turned into fertilizer?" "No," he said, scanning the area. "We trap it." Eva looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "You want to trap that?" "It's on autopilot," Raiden said, "which means it has orders. Patrol and purge. It won't leave until it's sure the area's clear." "And how the hell does that help us?" He pointed. Across the lot, a gutted power station, still half standing, its copper innards exposed like ribs. "Old junction coil's still in place. If we can bait it under that wreck, we bring the ceiling down." Eva frowned. "You sure that thing's heavy enough to trigger the collapse?" Raiden looked her dead in the eyes. "It better be, or we both die guessing." They split. Eva circled left, weaving through broken alleys, bleeding from the arm but steady on her legs. Raiden went right, fast and low. He grabbed a chunk of metal from the ground or a car mirror and flung it across the yard. The walker reacted instantly. It turned, eyes glowing bright blue, and fired a burst that melted the concrete where the mirror landed. The noise echoed like thunder through the skeleton of the city. "Come on," Raiden whispered. "Follow the bait." He bolted toward the station. 2 more shots followed, plasma tearing into the ground behind him. Heat kissed his neck. The hair on his arms singed. But he didn't stop. Not for a second. He hit the power station doors and dove inside, heart pounding like a war drum. The walker gave chase. Its massive legs cracked asphalt with every step, crunching debris underfoot. It moved like death given form, methodical, unstoppable. Inside, Raiden scrambled up a rusted stairwell. The platform above gave a perfect view of the loading bay below, and the rotten, unstable roof above it. Eva appeared on the far side, behind a pile of rubble. She gave him a quick nod, then tossed her grenade, not at the walker, but at the base of one of the ceiling supports. Boom. The structure groaned. The walker entered. Raiden didn't wait. He pulled the pin on his last grenade and dropped it on the far beam. Another boom. The entire ceiling creaked, then split. The walker looked up. Too late. Steel girders and bricks rained down, crashing onto its armor like a wrathful god. Its main cannon fired once, wildly, the shot ripping through the second floor. Then it vanished under the collapse, buried in twisted wreckage. Dust exploded through the station like a sandstorm. Raiden coughed, shielding his mouth, ears ringing. For a long moment there was silence. Then a single, sharp, mechanical whine. The walker's core, struggling, trying to power up. Raiden didn't hesitate. He jumped down, found the edge of its armor sticking out of the rubble, and shoved his stolen plasma knife into the seam near its sensor array. Sparks flew. The metal screamed. The machine spasmed once, then died. They didn't cheer. No one did anymore. It was just another corpse on another battlefield no one would remember. The survivors regrouped near the edge of the city, 7 of them. Of the 23 who started that morning, that's all who made it. Raiden didn't ask for names. He didn't want to know, not until he had to. They camped that night in the basement of a wrecked theater. No fire, no light, just silence and cold. Ava sat next to Raiden, wrapping her arm in gauze she'd boiled earlier. "So, what's the plan now?" "South," Raiden said. "We keep moving. There's a base in the Oklahoma hills. Real resistance. Military grade, they say." "Yeah," she muttered. "You said that yesterday." "Still true?" "You believe in it?" Raiden stared at the cracked floor. "I believe in not dying tomorrow." She snorted, then winced. The wound was worse than she let on. Infection was a death sentence out here. No meds, no clean tools. Raiden leaned back against the wall. "Used to think I'd die for something. Now I'll kill for something." Eva looked at him. "What?" He didn't answer. The next morning, Raiden woke to the sound of voices. Not whispers, loud, confident. That didn't happen anymore. He rose slowly, knife in hand, and peered around the edge of the theater lobby. 3 new people, clean, armed. Organized. Too clean. One of them, tall, broad, with a regulation helmet and a patch that said Colburn, noticed him first. "Easy," Colburn said. "We're on your side." "No one says that unless they aren't," Raiden replied flatly. The man raised his hands. "We're from Hill Point Base, Oklahoma. Recon Squad. We've been tracking Grail deployments in this zone. Picked up your signal yesterday." Raiden froze. "We didn't broadcast anything." Colburn smiled. "You didn't, but a drone did. One of ours. Modified. Shadowed your little stunt at the power station. You dropped a walker without real weapons. That got some attention." Eva appeared beside Raiden, limping. "Why come now?" "Because we're gathering. A full push. Last one. We have fighters, air support, orbital scramblers. We hit their mothership. Hard." Raiden narrowed his eyes. "You're planning to attack their orbital?" Colburn nodded. "We found a weakness. Inside man. Ex-contractor who helped them build the gravity lock. We disable it, we pull that ship down. No ship, no command structure." Eva leaned against the wall, shaking her head. "Sounds like a suicide run." "Maybe," Colburn said. "But it's one worth dying for." Raiden stepped closer. "You offering transport?" "Better," Colburn said. "I'm offering a reason." They left within the hour. The group moved fast. Military precision. Drones covering overhead. Signal jammers running. The old street routes were laced with sensors and traps, but Colburn's crew had maps, countercodes, and inside knowledge. For the first time in months, Raiden felt like they were on offense. The convoy reached the outpost in 2 days. Tucked deep in the broken hills, Hill Point was more fortress than base. Bunkers dug into cliffs, artillery nests disguised as dead trees. The hum of shield emitters built from salvaged Graal tech. Inside, real soldiers moved with purpose, not the broken ghosts of city ruins. These were trained, equipped, and pissed off. Eva took it all in quietly, her face unreadable. Raiden met the commander, an older man with burns across half his face. Name was Harrow, voice like gravel, eyes like knives. "You're Raiden Holt," he said. The one from Sector 7. Raiden nodded. You made quite a mess back there. Wasn't trying to make a point, Raiden said. Just trying not to die. Well, Harrow said, you're going to get your chance to do both. That night, the plan was laid out. The Grail mothership, orbiting above Nevada, controlled the entire invasion effort. Troop coordination, resource distribution, atmospheric disruption, everything. They couldn't take it down from space, so they'd bring it to them. Using a prototype EMP rig and a stolen power core from a dismantled Grail cruiser, they could force a temporary system crash, drop the ship into the upper atmosphere. If it survived the descent, they'd hit it with everything they had left. It's not just about winning, Harrow said. It's about making them bleed, make them feel what they made us feel. You in? Raiden looked around. At the faces of men and women who'd lost everything and still stood. At Eva, her arm stitched now, but her eyes darker. At the dog tag he still kept in his pocket. He stood. I'm not here to win, he said. I'm here to remind them who the fuck they woke up. They called it Operation Ashfall, not because of poetry, but because of what would follow if they failed. The plan was insanity wrapped in desperation. No Air Force, no satellites, just a pile of scavenged alien parts and angry human hands. They were going to crash a starship, a Grail mothership, the size of a city, into Earth's atmosphere. And then, somehow, kill what survived. Raiden stood over the schematic, etched into the concrete floor with chalk and blood. Everyone in that room looked exhausted, gaunt, half dead, but not broken. Commander Harrow's voice cut through the silence. EMP rig gets planted inside their signal repeater in Arizona. That's what feeds their synchronization with the mothership. We trigger the pulse from there, not from here. That close, it'll burn your bones from the inside if you're too near. Raiden already knew where this was headed. Suicide run? Harrow didn't deny it. Someone has to arm the core manually, delay the countdown, give the rest of the squad time to evac. Silence. Raiden's eyes moved across the faces in the room. Young, scared. Too many barely out of school when the world fell apart. I'll do it, he said. Eva looked up sharply. Ray, I'm the only one who's seen the inside of their repeaters. I've scavenged 2 of them. I know the layout. Harrow nodded slowly. It's yours then. You'll have a squad, transport, cover. We'll give you everything we've got. But once you plant that core, there's no coming back unless you're faster than death. Raiden shrugged. Never was good at goodbyes anyway. The next morning, the air was colder than usual. The kind of cold that seeps into your teeth and stays there, no matter how much you move. Raiden loaded gear in silence. Plasma knife, sidearm, heat pulse carbine. He didn't trust the Grail energy weapons. They always failed when you needed them most, like they knew who was holding them. Eva approached as he strapped on the last of his armor. Her hair was tied back. She wore black. Not tactical. Mourning. You don't have to do this, she said. He looked at her, calm. If I don't, someone else will. And they might not make it far enough to finish the job. You don't even know if this will work. The ship might not fall. They might just fry us all. They might, he agreed. But they might not. Eva stepped closer, voice lower. You think dying makes you a hero? No, Raiden said. I think not trying makes me a coward. Silence. She stared at him for a long moment, then leaned in and pressed something into his palm. A silver chain. Dax's makeshift dog tag. You gave it to Harrow, Raiden said quietly. I stole it back. Her voice cracked. You bring that back, even if it's the only thing that makes it. They departed at nightfall. 3 transports, each old-world military haulers retrofitted with Graal shielding tech. Powered by hybrid fuel cells, barely holding together with duct tape and rage. Raiden rode in the first truck, sitting across from a boy named Saul, barely 19, quiet, nervous, too young to be dying this far from home. "You scared?" Sewell asked. Raiden looked at him, eyes hard. Terrified. "Good," Sewell said, forcing a laugh. "Me too. I'd be more scared if you weren't." They crossed the Colorado line by midnight. The roads were broken, cratered by orbital strikes and time. No other vehicles, no signs of life. Just the open black of a world that no longer belonged to them. By morning, they reached the signal repeater, a tall alien structure rising from the desert like a monolith. Black metal, pulsing with faint blue veins, almost organic. It was built on the ruins of an old observatory. Scouts had cleared the perimeter, or so they thought. Raiden and the squad approached low, keeping to rocks and ruins. The wind cut like glass. Inside the repeater, the core hummed. The signal chamber pulsed, the brain of the invasion network. Raiden stepped forward and pulled the charge from his pack. A modified Graal power cell wired with human ingenuity and desperation. He was halfway through calibration when the first plasma bolt tore through Saul's chest. The kid hit the ground, gurgling, eyes wide. Raiden spun around. The Graal hadn't vacated after all. They'd cloaked themselves, invisible until it was too late. Ambush. Chaos exploded. One soldier vaporized before she could scream. Another tried to run and was torn apart mid-stride. Raiden dove behind a console, dragging the core with him. His carbine was up, barking short, controlled bursts. The energy weapon hissed and overheated after 3 shots. Graal fire was more precise, more efficient. But human fire came from fury. Ava's voice buzzed in his earpiece. "Status? Ambush," he hissed. 2 down, planting anyway. Abort. Extraction's 10 minutes out. No time. Raiden slid across the floor, fired another burst and slammed the power cell into place. If I don't finish it now, it's all for nothing. A Graal dropped from the ceiling, its blade slicing the air, nearly taking his head. Raiden ducked, grabbed a pipe from the ground, and jammed it into the creature's side. It screeched. He kicked it back, raised the plasma knife, and drove it into the thing's chest. Blue blood sprayed. It twitched, then died. He turned back to the rig. The timer was online. 60 seconds to detonation. One of the Graal, bigger than the rest, elite unit by the armor, roared from the chamber entrance. Raiden didn't flinch. He raised Dax's tag, kissed it once, then pressed the override. The pulse triggered instantly. The world cracked. A wave of invisible fire screamed out from the repeater, burning electronics, comms, engines. Even the sky seemed to flicker. And far above, the mothership trembled. Systems fried, stabilizers failed. For the first time since the war began, it began to fall. Raiden lay broken near the core, one leg shredded, ribs shattered. But he was alive, just barely. Eva's voice came in faint, static-laced. "You're still there," he coughed. "Blood. I planted it. We saw the pulse. You have to move. Evac is inbound." "I can't," he whispered. "Too much damage." "No," Eva said. "No, you don't get to die here. Not like this." Raiden smiled. "Don't cry, kid. I'm not a kid anymore." He chuckled, winced. "You never were." Static, then silence. The mothership began its descent. From orbit it looked like a falling sun, fire and fury trailing behind it as gravity took hold. It broke the sound barrier 5 times on the way down. Cities saw its shadow. Oceans boiled beneath it. And when it hit, the sky turned black. The blast wave shattered mountains. The heat vaporized miles. And the Grail War, for the first time, ended with silence. 3 days later, Eva stood at the edge of the crater. The remains of the mothership still smoldered, cracked open like an egg. The air was toxic, the ground scorched. No life for miles, just echoes of something that had once ruled the sky, now nothing but wreckage. She held the dog tag in her hand. Dax, human. She added another next to it. Holt, human. Then she walked away, eyes forward. Because the war wasn't over, not yet, but Earth had just reminded the stars of one brutal truth. You can bleed a human. You can break a human. But you cannot make them quit. 6 weeks after the fall, the sun had returned, but it didn't bring warmth. It shone over charred landscapes and skeletal cities. Trees stood like blackened matchsticks. Rivers ran thick with ash. The sky still coughed smoke from the death of the mothership, even though most of it had already drifted into the upper atmosphere like dust over an old grave. They said Earth had survived. But the truth? Earth had endured. There's a difference. Eva knew it better than anyone. She walked through the remains of Henderson, a Nevada suburb that used to be filled with laughing kids and backyard grills. Now it was hushed, haunted, a graveyard where every house held a story that ended the same way. Burned, broken, silent. She carried a repeater rifle, Graltech modded with a human trigger. 6 shots before overheating. Accurate, quiet, efficient. Same as her. Eva was no longer a scout, or a runner, or someone who waited for orders. She gave them now. The others called her captain. She never asked for the title. Didn't correct them either. She climbed onto a half-collapsed overpass, scanning the road with cold, calculating eyes. Behind her, a squad of resistance fighters waited for her signal. 2 men, 1 woman, all ex-civilians, all killers now. Eva raised her hand. 3 fingers. Hold. She pointed forward. 2 Graal, the smaller, faster ones, patrolling near an old gas station. Runners, she said under her breath. Scouting for a hive. The woman beside her, Mira, late 20s, feral quiet, chambered her bolt. If there's a hive, we need to torch it, Eva nodded. No witnesses. They moved in silence. That was the difference now. Humans had learned. No more reckless charges or emotional screams. Now they hunted like wolves. Quiet. Together. Lethal. Eva and Mira split left. The men flanked right. The Grail didn't even sense them until it was too late. One fell without a sound, neck severed by Mira's blade. The other turned just in time to take a bolt through the face, fired by Eva at 5 meters. It dropped, spasming once, then still. Eva knelt over the body, not out of respect, to check the comm implant. It was still active. She yanked it out with pliers, crushed it under her boot. They were calling in positions, she said. That means the hive's nearby. Mira nodded. Could be a nest forming under the casino sector. Tunnel system still intact. Eva stood. Then we clean it out before it spreads. 2 hours later, they reached what was once Silver Line Casino, now half buried under rubble. The upper floors were gone, just dust and memory. But the lower levels? Still intact, still useful to anything that liked the dark. Graal liked the dark. Eva led the descent, weapon tight to her shoulder, boots careful on the broken tile. The air smelled of mold and something worse, something wet and alive. The others followed without question. That was the thing now. People trusted her. Not because she was warm, but because she lived when others didn't. They reached the basement level. A faint blue glow pulsed from the corridor ahead. Graal residue, bioenergy, hive signature, bingo. Eva held up her fist. Everyone froze. She pointed to the hallway. 2 minutes, we hit hard, burn the eggs, and pull out. Copy, Mira whispered. Any sign of a prime? One of the men asked. Jared, former construction worker turned sniper. If it moves and it's taller than you, shoot it in the face and keep shooting. No one laughed. This wasn't the kind of war you laughed in anymore. The breach was surgical. They stormed the hive, weapons blazing, Molotovs crashing against Graal incubation chambers. Acidic smoke filled the air as unborn monsters screamed from the fire. One of the soldiers, Tuck, took a spike through the shoulder from a wall-mounted defender. He didn't scream, just grunted, yanked it out, and kept moving. Eva moved like she was born for it. Cold, precise, efficient. The knife in her hand didn't hesitate. The rifle on her back didn't jam. Her eyes didn't blink. Then something moved. Something big. The Prime stepped from the shadows like a nightmare dipped in tar. 8 feet tall, muscles like coiled stone, a face covered in armor plating and dripping with venom. This one wasn't built for war. It was built to finish wars. Jared fired first. 3 shots. The Prime caught 2 in the chest, staggered, then roared so loud the walls shook. Eva didn't wait. She threw her last grenade. The blast hit its knee, shattering part of its leg, sending it crashing to the floor. But it wasn't dead. It grabbed Mira by the throat and slammed her against the wall. Crack. She went limp. Eva screamed, not in fear, but in fury. She dove forward, burying her plasma blade under the Prime's chin, driving it through muscle, bone, and brainstem. It twitched once, twice, then dropped. Eva stood over it, panting, blood on her face, hands shaking. Jared knelt beside Mira. She's breathing. Barely. Eva looked around. Torch the rest of it. We're not losing another one today. They burned the hive down to the bones. By the time they surfaced, smoke rose behind them like a funeral pyre. Mira was on a stretcher, barely conscious but stable. Jared walked beside Eva, reloading his rifle. That's 5 hives in 2 weeks, he said. At this pace, we'll run out of Graal before we run out of matches. Eva didn't smile. They're not done, just scattered, and cornered animals bite harder. You think more will come? They always do. He studied her face for a second. You never stop, do you? No, she said. And neither would he. He didn't ask who he was. He didn't need to. That night, Eva sat alone outside the camp perimeter, watching the stars. The sky had cleared slightly, just enough to see the constellations again. Orion, Cassiopeia. That was something. A reminder that the universe was still out there, even after all the fire. She held Dax's tag in her hand, the one Raiden carried to his death. She remembered the last thing he'd said. Don't cry, kid. But she did. Quietly. Just for a moment. Not because she was weak, but because she was still human, and no matter how strong you got, grief had a way of creeping in when the battle was over. The camp was growing, survivors flocking in from the wastelands. Small towns that had gone dark were lighting up again. Engineers were rebuilding grids. Farmers were returning to their fields. Children were laughing again. That terrified Eva more than anything, because hope made people soft, made them forget the cost. She wouldn't let them forget. Not what was lost, not what was fought for, and not what might come again. Because somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the solar system, the Graal weren't finished. And when they came back, they'd find a planet that had already buried the worst. A planet that bled, that broke, but never, ever quit. 3 months after the mothership fell, Earth was breathing again. Crooked, raspy, coughing up blood, but breathing. The smoke was clearing. Small towns were blinking back online. Radio towers buzzed with patchy transmissions, survivors coordinating across broken nations, rebuilding from ruins. Fields were being cleared for planting. Old military bunkers were being converted into defensive outposts. Humanity was limping toward a new normal. And underground, below the edge of what used to be Phoenix, Eva was building an army. They called the place Crater Base, carved into the earth beneath the wreckage of the mothership's impact site. Half tech, half tomb. Grail alloy fused with human steel. Biofuel labs working beside diesel rigs. Computers cobbled from alien cores and scavenged circuit boards. Every wall hummed with the kind of tension that came from too many ghosts and not enough sleep. Eva stood over the central table, studying a 3D map of the Earth's upper atmosphere. Green dots marked resistance outposts. Red ones marked unknown objects detected by long-range scans. One of those red dots had just blinked on. "They're coming back," said Clemens, the head of her intel team. Ex-teacher, now a reconnaissance strategist with a vendetta carved into his soul. "Same signature?" Eva asked. "Worse, heavier mass, higher heat output, different ship design. This isn't a command vessel, it's a siege barge." Eva nodded slowly. "Ita? 6 days. Tops." The room went quiet. Everyone had been hoping for more time. A year, a decade, something. But the Grail didn't care about humanity's wishes. They only cared that they had lost. And now they were coming to erase the mistake. Eva called a meeting. 12 regional resistance leaders joined her via hardline, glitching holograms flickering over the table like ghosts of other wars. Some wore military fatigues. Others, civilian gear marked with makeshift patches and stolen insignias. But all had the same look in their eyes, the look of people who'd buried friends and burned monsters. "This isn't another invasion," Eva began, voice low but steady. "This is punishment." She didn't need to explain. Everyone had read the decoded fragments. The Grail were sending a siege barge, not for conquest, for cleansing. Their equivalent of a nuclear option. It wouldn't enslave Earth. It would erase it. Clemens piped in. "The barge is automated. Minimal life forms aboard. AI-controlled siege weapons, surface sterilizers, heat bombs, radiological bursts. If it lands, we're not rebuilding this time. We're not surviving it." Someone cursed. Another just bowed their head. Eva continued. "We don't stop it from orbit. Not enough firepower. We don't have the fleet, but we have the blueprint of their AI network, thanks to Raiden's data core before he died." The name hung in the air like smoke. Raiden Holt, still remembered, still respected. "We know where the ship's brain is kept. A fail-safe node, deep inside, heavily shielded, but vulnerable to intrusion if we get a small team inside." More silence. She waited. And then, finally, one of the leaders asked the obvious. "You volunteering again?" Eva nodded. "I'm not asking anyone to do what I wouldn't." Training began that night. Crater Base transformed. Engineers focused on building a drop pod that could pierce the siege barge's hull without disintegrating. Hackers, former game devs, and cyber criminals worked on virus payloads to shut down the AI long enough to plant explosives. Weapons were prepped, suits customized, nerve stabilizers administered, and Eva. She prepared in silence. She stood in the same room Raiden had once used before his final mission. His tags still hung from the edge of the wall. She didn't touch them anymore. She didn't need to. He was part of her now. His rage, his will, his refusal to quit. The others trained like soldiers. Eva trained like war itself. Day 5. The siege barge was now visible to radar. The size of a mountain. No escorts, no diplomacy. Just vengeance. Eva stood on the launch platform, fully armored. Sleek black plates over reinforced carbon fiber. Human-made. Alien-enhanced. Each piece bearing scratch marks and impact dents from the last war. She carried 2 rifles, a plasma cutter, and a backpack of shaped charges. Her squad was small. Only 3 others. Jared, now her second in command. Older. Meaner. Still a dead eye. Tuck, the man who once took a Grail spike to the shoulder and didn't even flinch. Now their explosives expert. And Ren, the quiet one. Former satellite engineer. Their ticket into the AI core. No speeches were given. No one said goodbye. Everyone knew what this was. They launched at 0300. The pod punched through orbit like a bullet wrapped in fire. The stars blurred. The sky cracked. Then they hit. The siege barge's hull screamed as they tore through it, metal shredding, alarms blaring in a language that didn't belong on Earth. The pod crashed into a narrow corridor near the mid-deck, just like the schematics predicted. Ava was the first out. Gun raised, boots down. Jared followed, covering the rear. Tuck rolled out with a blast shield in hand. Ren was last. Backpack already glowing with code and crackling energy. The ship was alive. It moved like it breathed, walls pulsing with faint blue light, floors that felt too soft beneath their feet. Grailtech was organic. Always had been. They didn't build ships. They grew them. And this one was hostile from the inside out. They fought their way through the corridors. Automated turrets, defense drones, biosentries that shrieked like children and exploded in acid when killed. One by one, the team pushed forward. Bullets screamed, plasma hissed. Eva took a hit to the shoulder, armor scorched, skin burning, but kept moving. Jared laid suppressive fire. Tuck blasted the bulkhead to clear the swarm. Ren hacked every locked door before it could seal them inside. Then, the core. They reached it, a massive chamber pulsing with dark light. At the center, a glowing orb of twisted flesh and circuitry. The mind of the siege barge. A synthetic brain built from the consciousness of thousands of Graal, fused into one hate-filled machine. It turned to them. Not with eyes, with awareness. A voice entered their heads. Dry. Cruel. You are insects. You delay extinction by minutes. Eva didn't flinch. Maybe. But it only takes a second to pull a trigger. Ren plugged into the core. The AI fought back, screeching in waves of mental static, psychic echoes of every species the Grail had wiped out. Ren bled from the nose, shook, but held. Jared and Tuck laid down cover fire as security systems activated. Ceiling-mounted disruptors tore through the air. Eva jumped in front of one blast, taking the brunt of it to protect Ren. She screamed, hit the floor, but still crawled forward, dragging the final explosive toward the core. "Do it!" Ren gasped. Eva pressed the charge against the core and armed it. "You cannot kill memory," the voice hissed. She leaned in, whispering through bloodied teeth. "Watch me." The team ran. Sirens wailed in unnatural tones. Lights dimmed. Gravity failed. They barely reached the pod in time. Jared had to carry Ren. Tuck limped with a cracked rib. Ava collapsed just as the doors sealed. The pod launched seconds before the ship began to collapse in on itself. The AI's death scream vibrating through space like a dying god. Then, light. Fire. Silence. They crashed back to Earth 2 hours later, just outside Crater Base. Smoke, dirt, blood, screams, silence, and then cheers. People ran toward them. Medics, fighters, survivors. They'd done it. They had stopped the apocalypse. Again. But it didn't feel like a victory. Not to Eva. She sat in the medical bay later that night, left arm in a sling, IV in her neck. Jared sat beside her, half asleep. Ren was still unconscious. Tuck was missing a few teeth, but grinning. "You good?" Jared asked. "No," Eva said. He chuckled. "Good." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then he asked the question she'd been waiting for. "You think that was the last one?" She looked out the window, toward the stars. "No, but next time they won't find insects waiting." She stood, still sore, still burning. "They'll find monsters." Ours. The stars were no longer silent. They trembled. Because for the first time in recorded history, it wasn't aliens descending to invade Earth. It was humans rising to invade back. 2 months after the siege barge was destroyed, Project Recoil was launched. A single mission. A single objective. Bring the war to them, not for territory, not for conquest, but to deliver a message to the Grail. You started this war. We're ending it. Crater Base had changed. It wasn't a bunker anymore. It was command. Wires crisscrossed from wall to wall. Engineers hammered together launch bays. Docks were carved into the earth. And a makeshift space elevator, using a converted Graal tether spike, had been constructed. And at the center of it all was Eva, no longer just a captain. Now, commander of the first human off-world assault unit. They called it Spearhead 1. 4 drop cruisers, reverse-engineered from Graal wreckage. Each one held 20 fighters, each one piloted manually. No AI, no autopilot, no fallback, just blood, steel, and vengeance. The target was a Graal staging world, not their home planet, but a supply moon orbiting a gas giant in a system light years away. It was where they bred their weapons, hatched new soldiers, and launched most of the raids that crippled Earth. Intel, gathered from Graal prisoner scans and AI memory banks, called it Drethek 4, unremarkable to most races. But to the Resistance, it was ground zero for payback. Before the launch, Eva stood before the drop crews. 300 men and women, fighters, scavengers, ex-cons, engineers. Every single one had lost someone. She didn't give a motivational speech. That wasn't her way. She just said, "They bled us, burned us, took our homes. Now we show them what happens when you corner humanity." No cheers, just nods. Grim, determined. Everyone understood what they signed up for. Not a fight for glory, a hunt. Launch day. The cruisers tore through the atmosphere like bullets made of vengeance. Inside Eva's ship, Judgment, the lights were red, the air thick with tension. Ren sat at the back, plugging virus chips into a tablet. Tuck strapped grenades across his chest like he was decorating for Christmas. Jared, across from Eva, simply stared at his rifle, polished, quiet, focused. He looked up. "First step into hell, huh?" Eva responded, voice calm. "If hell has Graal, we're in the right place." The drop from warp felt like being hit by a planet. Then they arrived. Drethek 4 was a rock wrapped in death. Storms howled across its surface. The sky was thick with clouds, but not from water, from biofactories, where new Graal were incubated in liquid stasis. Black towers stretched toward the stars, pulsing with light. Ground structures like tumors sprawled across the canyons, hive-like, pulsing, breathing. It was more nest than planet. And now it was theirs. The cruisers slammed into the surface like meteors. Craters bloomed, hatches blew open, and humanity charged. They moved with purpose, no hesitation. Eva led the first breach team into Spire 9, one of the main neural towers controlling planetary defenses. The corridors inside were flesh-metal hybrids, walls that pulsed like veins, doors that responded to scent, not code. They were inside a living organism. Tuck laughed as he kicked one open with an explosive charge. "This place breathes creepier than my ex." "Shut up and plant the charge!" Jared snapped. Ren's voice crackled over comms. "Tapping into their relay. If we upload the virus here, we can blind the entire hemisphere." "Do it," Eva said. She moved fast, rifle raised, eyes sharp. Every step inside the Graal facility felt wrong. The air was too warm, the walls too close, the sound too alive. They weren't just walking into enemy ground. They were walking inside the enemy. A shriek echoed from above. Graal troops dropped from the ceiling, some winged, some crawling, some with too many limbs. They hit the humans hard. But Earth didn't flinch this time. They held formation, fired in bursts, moved as one. Eva dropped 3 with precision shots, then flipped her rifle to blade mode and sliced through another mid-air. Jared tackled a crawler before it could reach Ren, driving his knife through its throat. Blood, black, stinking, acidic, sprayed across armor. But no one broke. They'd seen worse. Earth had taught them that pain meant nothing if the mission survived. Ren shouted, "Virus is in! Pull out now or it fries us too." Ava grabbed him by the collar and shoved him toward the exit. "Move." Behind them the tower screamed, not mechanically. It screamed like a living thing dying, and it was. The lights flickered. The walls convulsed. Every circuit burned. When they hit the outside, the entire spire collapsed behind them, like a dying lung deflating. Above, the sky changed. The factory lights dimmed, turrets deactivated, the storm clouds began to fade. Jared smiled. "We blinded the planet." Eva didn't smile. She just said, "Next target." Over the next 7 hours, the humans tore through Drithek 4 like a wildfire. Every biofactory? Burned. Every egg chamber? Bombed. Every drone nest? Erased. They didn't spare anything. This wasn't a political war. This wasn't conquest. This was extermination. Eva moved from front to front, barely resting, covered in blood, hands bruised, voice hoarse. But her orders stayed sharp, precise, ruthless. Jared once asked her during a lull, "When's enough?" She looked at him, hollow. "When I stop hearing them scream in my sleep." By the next dawn cycle, Drithek 4 was dark. No lights, no movement. And not a single growl left breathing. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Ren had found something in the core of the last command tower. A signal map. A web of known Growl territories, their supply lines, their hive nodes, even encrypted traffic suggesting civil unrest in their outer colonies. Eva read it all, then circled one word on the map with a cracked marker. Arcos. Jared leaned over her shoulder. "That their home world?" "Not quite," she said, "but close." "What is it then?" Ava's voice was quiet. Cold. "The place they don't want us to find." She turned to the remaining commanders, her voice broadcast across all channels. "This was one nest, one operation, but we don't stop here. You want to survive? You want Earth to stay free?" The silence was electric. Then she said, "Then sharpen your knives, because from now on, we hunt." Arcos. The name didn't appear on any Grail transmission. No coordinates, no maps, no signals. And that's exactly how Eva knew it was real. The data Ren extracted from Drithek 4 hadn't just uncovered military traffic. It had pulled back a curtain. A blind spot in the Grail Empire, intentionally scrubbed. Every empire had one. The place where secrets slept. Where truth was buried in ash. Arcos was that place. Not their capital. Not their heart, but their spine. Where the empire stayed upright. Where the true leaders hid. Where the original Growl line began. You don't kill a monster by cutting its limbs. You kill it by snapping its spine. 3 weeks later, Spearhead 1 was reforged into Spearhead Final. No cruisers, no reinforcements, no plans to return. It was a one-way mission. Just 4 ships, half-melted, half-upgraded wrecks patched with tech stolen across 1,000 miles of war. They weren't warships anymore. They were coffins with a cause. The trip took 16 hours through a collapsed wormhole corridor barely held together by human guesswork and Grail navigational math. They called it the Bone Road, because it either carried you across space or cracked you into pieces mid-jump. But they made it. Barely. Arcos filled the viewport like a wound, a black planet veined with red. Storms swirled across the surface like bruises. Obelisks rose from its crust like teeth. And floating above it, connected by gravity locks, was a ring-shaped fortress, the Crucible, not a defense station, a throne. It was there the first Grail lived, the ones who never spoke. The ones who ordered every war from behind walls of silence. They hadn't fought for centuries. Now, they would die in one. "Everyone hears the same story," Ava said over comms. Her voice was calm, steady. "That humans break, that we bleed, that we scatter." She paused. "We do all those things." Another pause. "But we never stop." And with that, Spearhead Final plunged toward the Crucible. They hit the station at terminal velocity. Boarding pods slammed into its outer hull, cracking the obsidian plating. Vacuum alarms screamed. Red glyphs pulsed across corridors that hadn't been entered in a millennium. Inside, the air was thick, like it was breathing. Jared was the first out of the hatch. He rolled, took out 2 Grail sentries with a single shot, then helped Ava through. Ren and Tuck followed, carrying the last of the viral payloads. The Crucible was not made for war. That was its weakness. It was a temple, not a fortress, meant to be feared, not invaded. Ava intended to remind the Grail that fear works both ways. They pushed through the outer chambers, fighting no armies, only guardians. Tall, silent, albino, armored in ceremonial metal that cracked under bullets and screams. Ren was hit once in the ribs. His suit held. Just barely. He didn't cry out, didn't stop moving. He knew what this was. They breached the inner sanctum after 40 minutes of close-quarters slaughter. The doors were solid crystal, bio-sealed, no way in, until Tuck pulled out a reactor cell the size of a human head. Eva raised an eyebrow. "You sure that'll open it?" Tuck shrugged. "Not sure it won't." He slapped the cell onto the door, primed it, and ran. Boom. The hallway cracked. Crystal turned to dust. The door liquefied under the pressure. They stepped through, weapons raised, and saw them. The first Grail sat in silence. 5 of them. Not warriors, not soldiers. Thin, tall. Skin the color of rotted pearl. They were hooked into a living throne, veins plugged into machines, eyes milk white. They didn't move, didn't flinch, but Eva felt their minds. Cold, old, heavy. One of them spoke, not with lips, but in her head. "You bring disease into the temple." Eva leveled her rifle. "No, I bring history, and you wrote the first page." The mind voice hissed, overlapping with others. "You are emotion, chaos, weakness. Our mistake was leaving you wild." She stepped forward, stopping inches from their throne. "Your mistake was thinking we'd stay on our knees." Another hiss. "We will become again." Eva looked around. "Not if there's nothing left to rebuild." She turned to Ren, who nodded. The virus was armed. It wouldn't just fry the Crucible's AI, it would destroy every record the Grail had ever stored. Names, maps, reproduction data, tactical files, genetic libraries, extinction through deletion. But Eva wasn't done. She stepped forward, staring at the central Grail. "There was a boy named Dax," she said. "He bled in a street while you watched from orbit. You called it efficiency." She pulled Raiden's tag from her neck, held it up. "There was a man who crawled into your networks and pulled them apart with his bare hands. You called him primitive." She dropped the tag at the first Grail's feet. "You never learned. And now, you never will." Ren hit the trigger. The virus spread like wildfire, through the walls, through the floors, through the mines. The first Grail screamed, their heads cracked, their bodies shook. Their minds, once merged, turned against each other. They burned from the inside out. No explosions, no flames, just the slow, wet sound of gods rotting in their own temple. The squad turned and ran. The Crucible collapsed behind them, towers crumbling, lights dying. They reached the last pod. Only room for one. They knew this. Ren looked at Ava. "I'll stay. I'll rig the failsafe. You all go." Ava shook her head. We die together or not at all. Tuck put a hand on her shoulder. Wrong. We fight together, but we die smart. He shoved her into the pod, slammed the hatch, hit the external override. Outside, the floor split. The crucible began to fall, dragged toward the surface of Arcos by gravity failure. Tuck looked back once, grinned, then turned and walked into the fire. The pod launched. It broke orbit as the crucible hit the planet's crust. The impact was biblical. The black moon cracked like a skull. Shockwaves raced across its surface. Fissures opened. The towers collapsed. The planet bled light. Arcos died, not with a scream, but with a whimper and a shudder. Eva watched from the viewport, strapped in and bleeding, Jared beside her, Ren unconscious. The last world was gone, and with it, the war. 6 months later. The sky over Earth was blue. Birds returned. Babies were born. Old buildings were rebuilt. The Grail, what was left of them, vanished into the outer edges of space, too broken to return. Humanity wasn't united. It never had been. But it was strong. It was ready. And it remembered. Eva stood on the edge of a cliff, overlooking a memorial carved into the stone. No names. Just one line. They bled, they burned, but they never quit. She placed 2 things at the base, Dax's tag, Raiden's tag, and whispered, "We're still here." Then she turned to the sky, because somewhere out there, someone else was watching. And when they came, they wouldn't find a broken race. They'd find a species that had learned to bite.